Hello there, cybersecurity and podcast universe. Welcome to the Cyber Savvy podcast, which is owned and produced by DTC. And remember, at DTC, we make IT work. All right, so I want to do a quick shout out to my dear friend and your host for the last 2 seasons of the Cyber Savvy podcast, Mr. Andrew Rose. If you listened to our last episode, Andrew interviewed me, introducing me as the new host. And it was such great fun to finally get to work with Andrew in that capacity. And I am excited for the direction that we are going to take this show today. And I couldn't think of a better person to have my first episode with than Mr. Loren Larson from Dell. Loren, it is so great to see you and hear your voice. How have you been, my friend? 2 years is far too long.
Yeah, 2 years has been quite some time, and I have been quite busy, but it's been like a whirlwind. It seems like 2 years went by so quickly, just because of the way the world is happening within the cybersecurity space and all that good stuff, as you can, imagine. So new challenges every day. So I'm glad to be able to catch back up with you. I'm really excited, and you make me blush being your first interviewee and all that good stuff. So I appreciate that. So
So for our viewing and listening audience, and by the way, the viewing is a new addition to these episodes. We're going to have them up on our YouTube channel. We're going to start cultivating the YouTube channel for DTC as well. And of course, you'll be able to listen to the show on Spotify and on iTunes and all the places that you have come to know and love and expect the Cyber Savvy podcast. So Loren, this very first segment of the show is called Business Person. And this is your opportunity to tell us about the business. Now, everybody knows the name Dell, but I'm sure you're going to give us a little context around your role as a cyber strategist there. And, big picture, so because people think Dell, they think computers. So
Right.
You can tell us just the grand scope of everything Dell does. And then the second half of that is the person. So, tell us a little bit about you and, do you have a dog? Do you like to read comic books? Do you fish on the weekend? Give us a little sense of the person, and then we'll get into the technology aspect of things. So, please, business person.
All right, sounds good. Well, so Dell Technologies has over the years made the transition into not just being a consumer products organization that sells computers and servers and things like that. They've really made a significant effort into providing services as well in the cybersecurity, well, just in the information technology space. And then the cybersecurity space, they've been bringing it along and building it up over time. I was hired back in like 2016 and brought on board to help initiate and build out a cybersecurity program with them. One of the first things I was starting to do was security assessments of organizations to get an understanding of how well they're currently lining up against the practices that they are supposed to either be doing by law or regulation, or just because they decided it was a good idea to start doing some sort of cybersecurity practices. And so I started out with that. So Dell has been building into that, and Dell has expanded into several different areas. Some of the ones are we call proactive services, and some of ones I would also call them reactive services. So we've made a big business, because it's been a great opportunity, having a cyber security response team that goes in whenever there's a ransomware attack with one of our customers. So they call up Dell and they say, hey, we've been hit, we need some help. And so we've actually gotten to the point now where we have an incident response retainer where Dell will sign up a customer in the event that if they do get hit down the road, those hours are there pre-purchased at a specific rate, and those individuals, customers, can use that and take advantage of it and get the help that they need when they're in a situation. Lately, I've been working on the proactive side. So I'm a virtual CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, as well as doing security assessments and things like that. And so we also have a cybersecurity technology services that we offer as well. And these are all sorts of practices that range from penetration testing to evaluating your for Active Directory to see how well you're currently doing with the management and configuration of your systems. We do vulnerability scanning, things like that. We do remediation work. So we've really broadened out, and it just depends on what's going on. Lately, though, our virtual CISO or vCISO, Chief Information Security Service, has been blossoming. I'm currently a CISO for four different organizations within our client base. One's a university, one's a local county government, that's their elections government. It's now expanding into the entire county government that I'm assisting them with. And then also I am working with various different organizations here and there as we pick them up and being their trusted advisor, if you will, to helping them, making sure that they've put together a security program that's going to help them be proactive versus the reactive thing that I was just talking about. So, but that's currently what I'm doing with Dell. My own background within cybersecurity started out back in 1999 when I got into information security. And then I was working on the infrastructure side, or the IT side. I was working as an engineer. I worked on Exchange and set up backup systems and tape library systems, and I was working for a pre-IPO company that back in 2000, we were when that whole bubble 2000 Y2K thing hit. We did all these different things. Also worked for several different banks and worked for federal government agencies on the IT side of the house. And then in 2005, I made the shift over into the IT security realm. And I've been working with that world ever since, doing security assessments, working with the Veterans Administration and helping them solve this long-term, I want to call it, they have the term for it. It's a material weakness that they have annually that they find through their IG investigations and things like that. So I've been doing all that type of work. Mostly I'm in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. right now. So I used to do a lot of work with all the civilian agencies around here. I used to say pretty much if you can name a civilian agency, I probably worked with them at one time or another, doing some sort of work with them, whether it's assessment or building out a security program or something like that. And then around 2016, I shifted over into the commercial space, working with Dell, and started doing that. I've also been, and I am, a certified senior assessor with the FedRAMP certification program.
Oh.
And so I do that work as well. And I'll either advise a corporation that's trying to get their software system certified, and helping them put together the pieces that they need to put together an entire security package that will get certified, or I'll do the assessment side of that, where I'll come in and validate whether or not they've actually done the specific things that they're supposed to do in order to get that certification. So I've been doing that as well. Plus now I'm also jumping into the CMMC world, which is that cybersecurity maturity model certification program for defense industry based organizations, and soon to expand everywhere within the realm of the government agencies working with commercial entities. So my past has been long and checkered, but I've been pretty busy. Like you said, do I have any hobbies? Right now I'm in the middle of building a shed. That's about the biggest hobby I got, is I got to do something. So, right. So,
yeah. All right.
So,
very, very cool.
Yep. So, those are the things I can try to do to keep me sane. Also, get outside and do some hiking, walking, stuff like that. But, it's been a decent road, but I'm here now. So it's been fun.
I want to touch on something that you probably didn't say with a whole lot of intent, but I think it's really important, particularly for the audience that I work with on a day-to-day basis. Now, your background is largely with mid-market and enterprise size entities, municipalities, colleges and universities, people with hundreds, if not thousands of employees, which translates to thousands and sometimes tens of thousands of endpoints.
Right.
And that takes more to support it. But I have always been of the opinion that the challenges that face a company with 5 to 10 employees are not terribly different from the challenges that face a company with 500 to 1,000 employees. That it's more about the scale of the technology, and equally important, that the bigger the company is, quite candidly, the easier it is for you to miss something.
Right.
So I'm curious to hear first your conversation there. Am I oversimplifying things, or the things that matter to a college and university should also matter to a private school that has 25 employees?
Right. Yep. And that is it's a very good point, because the college and the university, they're going to be required by some sort of federal regulation to maintain certain specific cybersecurity practices. That smaller school, they may not have that same burden placed upon them. However, they don't want to be the poster child for a breach of some sort, or a data breach or loss, where their information gets out there through whatever mechanism happened and occurred to make that incident occur. So at the same time, those smaller organizations, they still have a huge challenge, because they want to make sure that their reputation is not going to get sullied, and they don't have that burden on them going down the road. At the same time, they're also entrusted by their customers, the students or whatever, to make sure that they're keeping the data safe. And so it's an obligation, and they need to do it, and they need to take it seriously. But the thing is, like you were mentioning, when you have a smaller organization, you don't necessarily have the manpower in-house to do everything you need to do. So you have to figure out ways. Sometimes you got to get creative. Sometimes you have to outsource. Do things that you make sure you're still doing the things you need to do. I do work with a lot of small organizations, and I can see the burden it places on their employees. And there's so many good people out there doing this work. It's just that, some instances I see them, they get stressed out, they're overtaxed, and, it's hard to take a vacation and things like that. But when you go back to what you were saying is about the larger organization, it's easy for them to miss something. And when you think about it, in terms of a cyber criminal trying to infiltrate an organization, they only have to find one mistake that you made over time that you didn't even think about, and they can exploit that, somehow get in. And if there's other opportunities that they can exploit, they can move around, and they'll figure out how to take advantage of your organization. So you have to make sure that that one time does not occur. And so you have to make sure that you've been on top of your game and being proactive. And it's not an easy job to do. I can tell you right now, it's not a matter of if you're going to get infiltrated, hacked, or whatever you want to call it. It's more of a matter of when. And most organizations probably have already been through some level of penetration, but they don't even know it yet. So that's just the reality of things. So.
Yeah, and that leads to the next piece that I wanted to talk about. And this is sort of it's a two-parter. So somebody a lot smarter than me put together this little infographic talking about how IT has evolved. And so the two things I want to get from you is I'm going to lay them both out, and then you can tackle them any way you like. The first is the difference between IT versus cybersecurity, because I think there's a very popular myth, particularly as you go down to smaller businesses, that say, oh, well, I have an IT company, so I'm secure. I'm paying XYZ IT company to protect me. So they're taking care of that, which I roundly say, no, over 95% of them are not. And then with that, this grid that was built talks about there's functionally 5 segments of great cybersecurity. You have identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And as you move through that, your identify and your protect are very heavily technology based. They're
Right.
really, which is what a lot of IT companies are doing. They're putting in your firewall and they're updating your Microsoft and they're encrypting your hard drive. So they're identifying, they're protecting. But where they start to fall off, where people become much more important to the conversation, is detecting, responding
Hmm.
to the incident, and then recovering as necessary, as you cited with being brought in as a red team to resolve a ransomware issue. So talk to me a little bit about IT versus cybersecurity and how that slide scales from the importance of technology to people.
Yeah. The big difference between the IT and cybersecurity is the IT is just the operational side of the house. Remember when I said earlier I was in infrastructure? That's the IT.
Yep.
That's where you've got your employees, they've got a computer, they've got to access some sort of database or a system somewhere. And the IT side of the house is all that stuff, the connectivity between the machine itself to the application where it might be, and everything in between, data backups, all that kind of stuff. So the IT side is focused on making sure that you've got the tools in place that allow your employees to be productive and that they can do the work without being, in most cases overly burdened by things that they have to jump through hoops in order to make sure that they can do their job effectively. But it's still at the same time make sure that they don't do things that's going to cause problems throughout the organization, which is the IT security side of the house. The IT security side of the house is a very different realm. It's different security. It's a different set of tools or applications or devices that you have in place within your organization that are used to help you identify when there's some possible situation ongoing, and then that will then tell you how you need to react and what you might need to be doing the next steps. One of the biggest problems that I've run into, whether it's in federal, state, government, or local governments or whatever, is a lot of these organizations view cybersecurity as something that we can outsource. We'll hire a contractor to do it, and we're going to rely on that contractor to make sure everything's going right and things are taken care of. I've been on some rather large scale ransomware attacks where that was the mindset the organization had, and they said, "Well, who's watching the intrusion detection system?" "Oh, the contractor is." When you ask the contractor later on, "Oh, no, 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 we weren't watching the system. We put the system in place and we had it there for them because that was the job. That was the contract. We were supposed to set it up. We had it operational." Now, services like being a security operations center, which is called a SOC, that's where you have individuals who are then in place to monitor those systems and making sure that when something starts to light up the screens, then you can figure out what's going on and you figure out how to react. So the cybersecurity side is again, if you're doing it correctly, it's a proactive world. But like you said, identify, protect, react. If you are doing it properly, you've got the resources in place and the personnel in place to take care of all that stuff. If you don't have that and you think your contractors are doing that, that's where you're going to fall short. And
You'll regret it at that point because it's very easy these days to take advantage of some sort of 0-day vulnerability that can then allow people to get through your defenses and off they go. And the other side of the thing is too, people think about firewalls and other devices. That those are your perimeter edge security devices. They think of those as IT, but they're really more security because they have in place policies that prevent people from coming in and also policies that prevent people from going out without making sure that what's going out is supposed to go out and versus not being able to go out. So that's a security device in some realms. So it kind of there's a little blurring that happens on that, but routers and switches, they also do a lot of that stuff as well. But you have to make sure that you have the adequate staffing and training of your individuals who are operating those systems too. And that's where you can get into some situations if you don't have the right people in place, or you've got people, but somebody's got to take a vacation sometime, and you have a backup person that's going to be able to handle things and step in the event something occurs. So
And in no less than two moments in that description you just gave us, you identified something that is really missing from most companies, and that is process.
Right.
Oh, well, I thought that they were monitoring that software for us. Why did you think that? Was that documented somewhere? The answer 99 out of 100 times is no, it was not. And okay, if we have a ransomware attack, who do we alert? From all the way down to the person that's at the front desk, from the CEO all the way down. What's the process? Now most people say, "Well, I call the IT department." Okay, well, are you calling in a trouble ticket? Are you contacting the CISO specifically? How does that all work? And I think process goes a long way towards mitigating a lot of these threats that occur on a daily basis. And if there's a gap, which I mean, there are many gaps, but if there's a big gap out in the business world today, I think that's it. It's a lack of process.
that's a huge gap that does exist. A lot of organizations will go out, they're going to purchase some sort of security tool, they're going to get it in place, and they're going to say, that's it, good, we got it, we're covered. Not necessarily, because those key things that you talked about, process. So if you have a security tool in place and all of a sudden it starts to light up, telling you, screaming at you, hey, there's some sort of intrusion going on.
Bad thing happening. Bad thing happening.
What are you guys supposed to do? If you've not trained your people on how to react, they may not do things properly. Some people might go running in and they say, oh, the server's getting attacked. We need to go shut it down right away. Well, if you're trying to preserve evidence and things like that down the road, that's one of the things you don't want to do. You want to disconnect it from your environment so you no longer having whatever that device might be infecting other things. You just cut it off. But you want to try to keep that thing in a state where you can get whatever evidence might be in there from an attack that's in the RAM or the memory that's volatile that'll go away when you turn it off. That'll all disappear. Also, at the same time, if you bring it down, it may not come back up because of the damage that they may have done to your system. So those are the types of things that you need to know about. You need to have these processes in place in order to do that. One of the things I'm doing next month with one of our clients is we're going to do an incident response test. We're going to do an overall test of their incident response capabilities. This company has an external MDR, managed detection and response team that they've hired to do things with them in the event that something takes place. And so they're like an outsourced security company, like an outsourced security guard. So that they're watching, right? What we're going to test is to make sure that these processes that you kind of alluded to are in place. They know how to communicate. We're going to simulate 2 a.m. Saturday morning. Things start to go off. Who do you call? All right. So if you're inside the company and you get that call, what are you supposed to do? Do you have an idea? Do you have a list of people's names that you can go and make a phone call to who you need to bring in and start working the whole problem? Do you have that piece of paper on a piece of paper that's not built into one of your systems that might have been attacked and no longer is available? Those are the kinds of things that you need to know about and think about, and then how you would engage and react in the event something takes place. And so processes are really, really important. And, making sure that your people are trained on that. One of the key things about the processes that is sometimes missed is the training, not just of the individuals who actually respond to what might be the incident itself, but all of your employees. I mean, one of the biggest things is the communications requirements or restrictions that should be known by the employees of an organization. If for some reason somebody's sitting there, they're working on their computer, and all of a sudden this little graphic pops up and it says, oh, your computer is owned by us, and here's the phone number, and you call us and give us 27 Bitcoin and we'll release your day. what happens if that person sees that, they take their phone out and they take a picture of it, and then they put it up on Facebook, and all of a sudden, that information on how to respond to the ransomware attacker and stuff like that gets out there. All of a sudden, if that ransomware attacker gets a lot of unnecessary individuals starting to look at them, they may shut down everything, and then there will be no way to reach those individuals if you try to go down that road. At the same time, if you do that, if they shut down, you'll never know if anybody who comes back says, "Oh yeah, we're the one that attacked you, and we'll help you out. We'll just give us a couple Bitcoin, and we'll take care of you." Do you have any way of really knowing that that was the individuals and organizations that did that? No, you don't. So the training of your personnel on how to react, even if they're not in the IT response, the incident response program, that's a key thing that just nobody really all thinks about half the time. And so that you need to make sure that's the thing. You need to make sure that those employees don't start talking in social media saying our company just got hit, because that's one of the last things you want is that information to get out there, because there are requirements organizations must follow in terms of notifying individuals if their data has been breached and lost and stuff like that.
Really, in accounting, putting it on Facebook probably isn't part of that requirement.
Right, exactly.
And I love that you brought up training. And I think we'll just spend our last few minutes in this episode talking about that. For the longest time, employee training on cybersecurity was that annual event. It was a half hour to an hour. Everybody's in the conference room. They're probably a little sleepy from eating too much pizza for lunch.
Right.
And it was one of 6 things that they did that day. So, they had, harassment training in the morning, and then they had training on the new whiz-bang software their company's using, and then they had customer service training. And by the way, we're going to do this cybersecurity thing, and it's a fire hose, and they spit it at them. And, a week later, nobody remembers anything from it. Where time and time and time again, what has been shown is much more effective is little microdoses on a regular cadence, preferably weekly, but at least monthly. And I mean, 5 minutes. Hey, let me show you something. Is this a good idea or a bad idea? And then the person answers right or wrong. And then you let them know, hey, you got that right, or no, you got that wrong. And here's what you got wrong. But those microdoses of training, I really think go a long way. And again, it's a huge gap because less than 10% of the business community is actively doing that.
Right. Yeah, there was an organization I worked with a couple of years back. The CIO, he basically said something very similar to what you said. He was not a big fan of a once a year, take that security awareness training. You go through and you click through all the slides, and hopefully you get your answers right, and you kind of, and then it goes away, and you're not thinking about it anymore, and you're not involved with it. He thought of this as more of a socialization experiment where you try to bring in more exposure and different concepts. And he liked the idea of doing it on a monthly basis, or, frequently, not just, it doesn't have to be a specific cadence, but at least having that training there. So it pops up in people's brains and they start to continue thinking, oh yeah, I really do have to be careful. I have to think before I click. I mean, probably the biggest vector of attack into our organization is insider threats, and those are the employees and things like that. The majority of them are not malicious internal actors doing things. They're just making a mistake. They clicked on something. They got an email. They clicked on something, and then you never know. All of a sudden, something flashes on your screen. Next thing you know, you don't know it, but your machine has been compromised, and you didn't understand it. So, drilling in on a regular basis, cyber hygiene, making sure people understand they do need to think before you click, stuff like that, where they can be conscientious before they take an action and think that this might be something. Simulated phishing attacks that you can, use, where all of a sudden you're working and this email pops up and it says, hey, we need you to go validate your credentials. And it looks like it's an internal corporate message or something along those lines. And people will follow that there. They'll go click on it. And next thing you know, they've been compromised. So if you do these simulated phishing attacks, that is just another basic drill, if you will, to keep people thinking about what it is they should and should not do, and be careful when they encounter a situation, and then figure that out. Also, ensuring that the training includes use of social media, use of the internet. Are you going out as an employee? Are you using your computer to go out to specific areas on the internet that, not safe for work type of
It's a
thing?
very nice way to put it, Lauren.
Right. You never know what kind of things that might come back in with you. So that's the kind of stuff. So that training is useful and important in making sure people understand that. So
Well, I think that's a great place for us to wrap up this first segment. Lauren, thank you so much for joining us. And to our viewing and listening audience, we hope you've enjoyed this, and we hope you'll come back for the next episode where Lauren and I are going to continue the conversation. We're going to get a little nerdy. We're going to get into compliance frameworks and the subtleties between them and the overall value. But thank you for tuning into the Cyber Savvy podcast, which is powered by DTC. And remember, at DTC, we make IT work.